Hi everyone, how's it going? My name's Ren Smith. I'm an organizer with Sierra Club. Thank you so much for being on early. I'm really excited to see that we have a few people joining already. We're going to wait just a few minutes and get started 3 minutes after the hour just to give everybody a chance to get logged on. Cool, I see we have a couple new folks joining us, so just for anybody that didn't hear it the first time, hello, my name's Ren, and we're going to wait just a couple more minutes to let everybody get logged on. So thanks so much for being here on time. Oh, hi, Velma. I just saw your question. Yeah, thank you for being here. And yeah, of course, everyone feel free to use the question and chat features. It'll be kind of hard for me to monitor that while I'm giving the presentation, but there will be some time for question and answer at the end. So yeah, any questions that you guys have, you can let them stack up there, and I'll try to get to as many as possible at the end. Cool. So it's about 3 after the hour. So it looks like we can go ahead and get started. I am going to share my screen. And if y'all could help me out and let me know in the chat whether it's working, I'd super appreciate it. All right, give me 1 second to get this queued up. Cool. Can y'all see that? Can somebody let me know in the chat if you can see the presentation? Awesome. Cool. Thanks. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So thanks so much for joining today. Our first in a series of organizing workshops where you'll learn different tactics that you can use to help organize your community. So this first installment today is about giving effective public comments, and I'm really excited to share this presentation with y'all. Cool. So I'll start out by introducing myself. So like I said, my name's Ren Casper Smith. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. And I'm the fossil-free front range organizer with Sierra Club's Colorado chapter. So my role is focused on moving the investor-owned utilities in Colorado off of fossil fuels. So this picture to the right here is actually from a few weeks ago when I delivered a petition to Xcel Energy's headquarters in Denver with more than 4,000 signatures from ratepayers and community members, asking them to accelerate their transition to renewable energy sources. So it's a very exciting day. And yeah, a couple more things about me. I'm from Los Angeles originally. I was born and raised there, Moved to Denver about 3 years ago and have been really loving it. And my superpowers are I can make anything vegan, and I can back that up. and, and I can follow. I'm talking loud roommates upstairs, uncomfortable planes and cars, which if you're not like me, that's definitely a superpower. So I know we have a little bit of a smaller group today. I'm really happy to be in community with y'all. If anybody wants to introduce themselves and share any of their superpowers in the chat, you can go right ahead. Cool. And then real quick, here's a little bit of an agenda for tonight. We have the schedule until about 8 p.m. So we will start by just going over the basics of what is a public comment, what is the process like, and we'll move into what makes a good public comment and the process for writing one. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about an opportunity to put some of these skills to use on an upcoming, actually an ongoing public comment period for regional haze rulemaking here in Colorado. So just real briefly on this, regional haze refers to visible air pollution that affects our state. And there are regulations currently in the process of approval for some early fossil fuel power plant retirements in order to reach our statewide goals for reducing that visible pollution. So there will be an opportunity to give verbal public comments at a hearing coming up on November 19th. And yeah, hopefully it'll be an opportunity for you all to put your new skills to use. And then finally, like I mentioned earlier, there will be some time for Q&A at the end. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited about this. And I also do just want to take a second to acknowledge that, it's a very tumultuous time in our country. I know there's a lot going on with election night turned into election week. So I'm really thankful to have y'all here today. I know for me, what's been really important recently, really through all of 2020 is, focusing on the things that I can control and being able to host workshops like this and, being able to apply some of these organizing tactics in my community helps me feel, more empowered in a time when there's a lot of crazy stuff going on around me. So yeah, I want to thank you all for being here and just invite you to be grounded through this presentation, whatever that means for you. And yeah, I also do want to take a second to acknowledge that I'm new at this too. I'm still learning how to use public comments effectively and how to organize my community to take advantage of this tool that we have for advocacy. So yeah, I'm really excited that we're here to do some learning together tonight. Cool. So, oh no, I'm right. Cool. So moving into learning about the public comment process. So what is public comment? So in a time when we really need to focus on the positives of being an American, one of the benefits of living in the USA is that we have laws that require the federal government to involve the public in federal decision-making processes. So one common way that the public is engaged in processes like this is via the public comment period. So often this is a period ranging from 30 to 60 days, sometimes longer. It may include public meetings to provide verbal comments or a method for submitting written comments, like through email or a government website. So comments may provide a position that lawmakers didn't consider when drafting a regulation or give more insight on the impact of a proposal. And comments can also help regulators improve rules. If a public comment presents compelling information, the federal agency to which it's addressed must take appropriate action. So comments can also have a direct impact by exposing regulations that are arbitrary or unnecessary. For example, rules or regulations restricting emissions or other gases that can't be attained. So it's a good opportunity to point out flaws in proposed rules. And all public comments legally must be read and acknowledged, although one response can acknowledge many comments that touch on a similar theme. So yeah, a public comment essentially is just a comment to a federal agency providing relevant feedback to a proposed rule or regulation under consideration by the US government. So every time a federal, state, or local government agency undertakes a significant environmental action, the agency has to put something in writing. So these documents, which can range from background information to records of decisions, are often quite complicated to produce, convoluted to read, but they can have really significant impacts on the environment, individuals, communities, all the way up to the ecosystem level. So public commenting is a process that allows individuals and organizations to provide input on proposed environmental decisions that will affect them. So commenting usually first happens internally within the lead agency, and then that period is followed by opportunities for people like you and me to comment on a public draft of the rule. So public comments can strengthen an environmental decision by providing the agency with facts or perspectives that were lacking in the original draft, or provide critiques, which can cause government agencies to stop and reconsider. So while commenting can first happen internally, that external period is a really important opportunity to provide feedback. So this is an excerpt from the federal law that I mentioned that mandates a public comment process. So it's called the Administrative Procedure Act of 1946, the one that I've referenced, but there's actually a few rules like this now. And it states that the agency shall give interested persons an opportunity to participate in the rulemaking through submission of written data, views, or arguments, with or without the opportunity for verbal presentation. So sometimes it may just be written only. And then after consideration of the relevant matter presented, the agency shall incorporate the rules in the rules adopted a concise general statement of the basis and purpose. So this is really great news. You can't just submit a comment and have it be ignored. It has to be acknowledged at some point. So federal agencies by law must consult the public in rulemaking. So most states aren't expressly mandated to offer public comment, but if the rule being produced at the state level will eventually be approved at the federal level, then federal rules apply. So in situations like the regional Haze rulemaking, it will be eventually approved by the EPA. So there is a mandated public comment period for that rulemaking here in Colorado. And then public participation is, a really essential part of good governance. And public comments are an important part of the lawmaking process. They offer the opportunity for all people, not just lawmakers, to participate in decision making. So, rejecting a tyrannical closed government model, a constitutional democracy allows for the participation of people in the rulemaking process that extends beyond just voting. So the really cool thing about this is, say, a law passes that is not beneficial to the environment, hasn't been adequately analyzed and could be stronger. If the comment process is not followed according to the law, then the government action is much easier to fight in court and can potentially be stopped or reversed. So changing the process so that it restricts the opportunity for the public to engage, especially some of these shady tactics that we'll see, such as shortening the process and not giving appropriate notice to the public, that can result in the process being challenged. It looks shady, and we have evidence to take to court saying, this wasn't appropriately discussed with the public. There wasn't an opportunity for feedback. So in situations like that, it can become a lot easier to shut down laws that otherwise would be pretty hard to fight in court. So that's another really cool thing about public comments. So yeah, before we move on, I do want to take a quick second to acknowledge that there are some pretty major accessibility issues with most public comment processes, despite the law literally saying that it has to be accessible to the public. So this is one thing, like many things in our daily lives that have shifted a little bit since the pandemic, but in our typical world, some of these, the forums that you could show up to give a verbal comment are pretty inaccessible for average folks. So the meeting times are often during the workday in government buildings that are placed in high traffic areas downtown, where parking might be difficult or expensive. They can be far away from areas that are most impacted by environmental injustices like sacrifice zones. Sometimes they're without multilingual translation, or without the forums are held without breaking down this like complex legal jargon. So it can be really hard for kind of the average person who has a lot of stake in these environmental decisions to be meaningfully involved in some of these stakeholder meetings. So it's something to be aware of, and it's also important to acknowledge your privilege showing up at places like this and cede time to people who might not have ever given a public comment before, or who have really relevant perspectives that need to be addressed. So yeah, although now is a really cool time to be looking into starting to give verbal public comments, because these days a lot of them are just over Zoom. So it's a lot easier to kind of just log into this room. Of course, granted access to technology, than it is to show up in public places in the middle of a workday. So that's a silver lining. Cool. So moving into some misconceptions that people have about the public comment process. So a lot of people think of submitting a public comment as a vote on a rulemaking. That's actually not necessarily the case. So it's more about the quality of your comment. So one well-supported comment can actually be even more influential than 1,000 form letters. And real quick, for anyone who might be unfamiliar with the term form letter, if you've ever signed like a change.org petition, maybe a petition on our own Sierra Club website that has like a base message that you're signing your name onto, that's what I'm referring to. So these petitions are definitely useful and they have a place, but for these government agency public comment periods, they might not be the most effective tactic in every case. So a form letter signed by thousands of people can actually be legally counted as just one comment in some cases. So numbers on one comment isn't everything. So organizations such as labor unions, environmental protection and conservation groups, and also industry that has stake in the rulemaking, can sometimes use form letters to reach out to their base of support and encourage them to voice their opposition or support of a rulemaking. And many in the public, will sign on to something like that, pat themselves on the back, and believe that that form letter is like a vote regarding the issues concerning them. But it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. So often the other side, like I mentioned, big industries will also get involved in this public comment process, asking for rules to be more lax. So of course, this is going to vary depending on the rulemaking, but just for an example, we can actually use the regional Haze rulemaking. It's about pushing for earlier retirements of fossil fuel power plants. So, a company that owns a plant might, get people involved and submit, comments that make the emissions goals seem unachievable, or do other things to try to weaken the argument. So the idea behind getting a lot of people involved and submitting comments is to balance out the other side, the opposition. So in contrast to the accessibility issues faced by the public, which I was talking about a couple slides back, big industries have all the time and all the resources in the world to get involved and submit a ton of really well thought out comments to government agencies in situations like this. So it's important that we balance that out. So I really do think of it as a debate. It's important to have people on both sides advocating for themselves. So in order to help illustrate, I've created this little diagram. So this is two different hypothetical scenarios that that could exist. So a lot of people think that sending in one a comment from an individual versus signing on, having other folks sign on to your comment. There's some confusion on which is a more effective tactic. So we have two scenarios here. The one on the left in red says, I organize 100 of my friends to sign on to my public comment, highlighting an area of concern for my community. So this is one comment that 100 people have signed on to. And then on the right, you have the blue scenario. 100 of my friends submit individual public comments, highlighting an area of concern for my community. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, because you'd think, 100 folks signed on to one comment, that's really powerful versus just one person submitting their own comment. But if we think back to what I was talking about, actually a situation like the one on the left, the red scenario, that could be counted as just one comment. So if you can have that many people submit their own comments and they're all hitting on the same points, that tallies up when government agencies are going through them, and that kind of advocacy can really stack up more in situations like this. So, commenting with others is still better than nothing, but individual comments are best. So agencies will collect all of the comments and then sort them into major points in categories. So if 100 individual people ask for something or make the same point, the agency is much more likely to make the change or consider the comment. If 100 people are signed on to one letter, that can be counted as one comment. So, although public support or opposition can help guide decision-making processes, agencies will make determinations based on the quality of the comments, the reasoning and the evidence behind them versus a majority of votes. So, you can consider submitting comments in your own words in addition to signing form letters. I'm not advocating against form letters. They're an awesome and really useful tactic. But you can always do both. You can always submit your own comments, and then, when an agency staffer is going through them, they're going to say, wow, hundreds, in some cases even thousands of people have, commented about this one point. This is something we should really take into account. So yeah, it's not always about how many people said they support or don't support. It's about how many substantive comments are received during the public comment period. So really think quality over quantity on this one. So what is a substantive comment? I'm glad you asked, hypothetically. It's about making sure that your comment is backed up and researched. So a substantive comment, and I've pulled this from regulations.gov, which is a website that is used to process public comments for different agencies. So a substantive comment does one of four things: provides new information to back up the proposed action, an alternative, or the analysis. So either in support of the action or in support of a different action, there's information there to back it up. It can identify an alternative, a different way to meet the need, and why that should be used instead of the proposed action. It points out a specific flaw in the analysis or questions the adequacy of analysis. One example I can think of is for the I-70 highway expansion. There was questioning over whether the pollution monitoring that was cited in that process was adequate. And then finally, causes change or revisions in the protocols or in the proposal. So anything that would make the agency, stop and reconsider and possibly edit the rule would make the comment substantive. So let's see. These are a few examples of substantive comments. So there's obviously some blanks here you would fill in with information. But so the first one reads, the analysis is inadequate because blank. So this would ideally provide data that the analysis did not include. So this is pointing out a blind spot in the proposed document that you're commenting on. The next one, the document says blank, which is not supported by data, studies, or citations of science. So this is calling out maybe a falsehood or something that's inadequately or inappropriately researched. Next, we have the document does not adequately account for the social cost of pollution and the public health issues it causes in my community. So this is an opportunity to kind of humanize the issue, maybe cite some lived experiences. So this is not all just about data and science. It's also about the people that live in these communities that are most affected by rules like these, are sometimes able to provide information that's been overlooked by folks just analyzing numbers, right? And then finally, this document uses the wrong methodology for analyzing an issue. And then ideally, you'd be able to explain why and suggest a proper method for reevaluating the science behind a document like this. So these are just some examples. This is by no means an exhaustive list of substantive comments, but these are some, I guess, kind of like structures for you to fall back on when writing a comment that you want to make sure is considered and that you get your point across. Cool. So yeah, and then everything that you do, you should tie back to your experience. So a comment can just express simple support or dissent for regulatory action, but a constructive and information-rich comment that clearly communicates and supports its claims is much more likely to have an impact on regulatory decision-making. So when commenting, don't just state whether you agree with the proposed action, but rather explain specifically why you agree or disagree, and what parts of the analyses are in question, what other information needs to be considered. Was there a typo in the report that they used which led to a flawed analysis? Was a recent scientific report overlooked that contradicted the report on which a conclusion was based? Um, was a statement made that was contradicted by an expert opinion? Is there new data that's been introduced since the document was drafted? So there's a lot of ways that this could go, but definitely also consider including examples of how the proposed rule would impact you personally, whether it's negatively or positively. You can also draw on data from similar communities that have benefited or suffered as a result of similar laws to the proposed one that you're commenting on. And then one more hot tip to humanize this conversation a little bit more is to check out the agency's mission statement and any statutes or values relevant to the regulation. So federal agencies' actions are driven by their mission, and they're held to standards, dictated by these agencies. So you can make your comments stronger by explaining how your information or your perspective contributes to their mission. You have to remember that these, are people behind these intense bureaucratic processes, and they're likely in the position that they're in because they want to help people. And most of these agencies will actually say something like that in their mission statement. So, refer back to that, call on that, and really hold people accountable to standing up to the values that they claim to represent. So moving into some do's and don'ts. So the first one, do keep your comments polite. So this is actually just what I was talking about, but remember to keep your comments respectful and recognize that the person receiving the comment might agree with you, but without strong, compelling arguments, they may be more or less powerless to make change. So despite it being easy to villainize the government, especially in positions like we're in right now, nationally and globally, government employees are individuals like you and me, and many might disagree with the rule or the action that their agency is proposing. But without scientific evidence, specific experiences to back up their claims, they're confined to work within an authority, that's issued to their specific agency on that specific topic. So when you're writing in a comment, try to recognize that the people that work for this agency are working within those constraints, and see it as working with them and giving them the tools and the information necessary to fight for your perspective because they have the power to do so. Don't wax poetic. So don't overcomplicate your comment or ramble. Try to be concise, but also support your claims. If a rule raises a ton of different issues or is about different subjects, you don't have to comment on every single one. You can cherry pick a few issues that concern you the most, would affect your community the most, or that you have the most solid understanding of. So yeah, it can be really tempting to write a big long paragraph, especially about something that we're really passionate about. I always try to visualize, just like a poor government employee, just going through pages and pages of comments that have been sent in. So the more concise you can keep it while still backing up your claims, the more likely it is that your comment will be read and understood thoroughly. Do establish your expertise. So experience is very powerful in a public comment. If you're commenting on an area that you have experience with, definitely let them know. If I was writing in a public comment, I might mention that I'm an organizer with an environmental nonprofit. But it's not all about work experience. The lived experience of your community also makes you an expert. And sharing your story can be a really powerful tool to help influence decision makers. If you live in a community that's suffered from pollution, that's something that you can talk about. These can often be really hard subjects to talk about, but if you are comfortable sharing your story, it can really move people. It humanizes the issue and contextualizes all of this, long filing procedure, and it grounds us in the truth that these rulemakings have direct effects on people's lives. Often because of the accessibility issues I mentioned earlier, the people impacted most by these forums don't get to be present. So if you have a story that is relevant to the issues that are being discussed, definitely use the opportunity to make your voices heard. Next, don't lose your progress, or you will look like this guy that I have on the PowerPoint there. So disregard this if you're, submitting a comment through email. But often the comments will be accepted through a portal on a government website like regulations.gov, which has recently been revamped. So I don't want to talk too much smack, but historically, a lot of these websites are super high traffic and not the best maintained in terms of bugs. So the last thing you want is to type in this long, beautiful comment into a government website and then click submit, and then the page bugs out and you lose your progress. So if you are going to submit through a website like regulations.gov, type up your comment in like a Google Doc first before you go ahead and paste it into the website, because you don't want to lose your progress. That's super frustrating. Next, do cite your sources. If you are citing any specific resources, definitely include a bibliography at the end of your public comment, literally just like if you were writing a paper for school. It'll help the agency staff find and reference the data that you're referring to in your comment, really helps strengthen your case for any adjustments that they need to make for them to be able to refer back and find the sources that you are drawing from. Cool. And then now we'll go ahead and move into kind of like a basic process for writing your comment. So there's lots of different shapes that this could take. This is just one, I guess, kind of like a template that you could use, just a real basic, first swing at writing a comment. So first thing you're going to want to do is address it. So to whom it may concern, thank you for the opportunity to comment, and then make sure that you name the document title that you're referring to. And if you're referring to a specific section of the document, you can name that there as well. If you're writing an email, you're probably going to want to put that in the subject line to make sure that's easily identifiable when agency staff are going through and trying to sort these comments into different categories. So next up, you're going to introduce yourself. So that credential slide a couple back, this is where you're going to want to do that. So state your name, any relevant experiences or positions that you've held, work or volunteer or otherwise. State where you live if you live in an area that's going to be significantly impacted by this rulemaking. Let them know who's writing to them, who they're talking to. And then next, this is going to be the introduction to the body of your comment. So identify whether you are writing to raise concerns, add new information that might have been excluded from the document, provide supporting evidence, whether you're just advocating for your community, wanting to provide some perspective. Name that before you move into your main points, so that they know whether this is a comment in support, in dissent. It'll help with the whole process. Again, picture somebody reading through a huge stack of all of these comments that have been sent in by the public. Helps to kind of sort things and keep it clear what the intention of your comment is. So then you'll go ahead and move into your main points. You want to write a sentence to a paragraph describing each point as it relates to the comment. Again, if you're calling out specific parts of the document, this is another great place to reference the document, quote parts of it if there are specific parts of it that you're responding to. Just make sure that they know what you're talking about. But yeah, so list your points and then draw quotes from sources that are offering information that you want to provide. This is the meat of your comment. And then finally, summarize it. So in a couple of sentences at the end, just like for a last paragraph, summarize your main points and then restate whether you're raising concerns, bringing up new information, providing evidence or perspective. Just a quick summary just to make sure that you got your main points across, and then The PS that's not on this screen is if you are citing any sources, to make sure that you include your bibliography right at the bottom below that. Great. So now I'll go ahead and share a couple of examples. So these are real examples from regulations.gov of comments that folks submitted on a rulemaking. So pasted in the slideshow as links for reference, because you'll all get this presentation sent out. But for right now, we can go ahead and look at them together ourselves. So this is one example of a really good comment. It's obviously really long, so we're not going to read the whole thing. But this is totally an appropriate length for a comment that you're submitting with, this much data in it. So this is on a rule concerning whether the yellow lance, which is a freshwater mussel, will be submitted, will be added to the list of endangered and threatened species. So right here, early on, they state that the proposed rule, that they think the proposed rule should be passed. And then they go on to back up that claim. So here you'll see mussels are an extremely important aspect of an ecosystem. They go on to detail the important effects that they have on increasing biodiversity. And then in the next paragraph, there's some information about why they're threatened, factors that can affect their populations. They cite some specific research here that says that runoff from sewage treatment plants can negatively affect populations. It proves that the water quality and the infrastructure changes near the freshwater mussel population is being affected, or is affecting their development. And then finally, this is a really great conclusion paragraph, wraps it all up. And here you'll notice it says the Endangered Species Act has been tasked with protecting the animals that fall under it, as well as their habitats. So that's that call to the agency's mission statement that I mentioned earlier. So it says it not only has to protect them, but has to develop a plan to help the species recover and thrive throughout time. So, this is a really great way to end this comment. It, touches on the need to act quickly, gives it a nice sense of urgency. Yeah, and then below you'll find a bibliography here. And one thing that I want to point out too is that this comment was submitted in April 2017, and a couple of these papers were published in 2017, one right before the comment too. So it's super, pertinent, relevant information that, that they might not have had when they were drafting the first proposed rules around the yellow lance. So really great comment, tons of information. This is definitely hits all the marks for being considered substantive, right? On the flip side, this is a less successful comment. It says, please pass this bill. I'll be sending letters of support for any animal or fish that is endangered. Pruitt has to go, who I'm assuming that's a politician of some sorts. But, this comment, while it definitely gets its dissent across, doesn't provide information to back up why this is such a compelling issue for the person that decided to comment. So, it's kind of a missed opportunity to provide more information that would really contextualize this. This is another example. I agree with the science, list it, which again, to the point, love it, but what science? Like it says with the science, so this is a perfect opportunity to draw from some papers like the other comment that I read, utilized to really back up what science are you referring to, like what information do we not have, what do we need. So yeah, those are just a couple of great examples. There's no right way or wrong way to write a comment as long as you are getting your point across and explaining it thoroughly. Cool. So now just a note on the differences between written public comments and verbal public comments. So both should be concise and to the point for maximum effectiveness. But watching your time on a verbal comment is particularly important because at a forum, they'll often limit the amount of time you have to speak. So And then, of course, when you are giving a verbal presentation, it's more important to make sure that you are speaking clearly and slowly so that you can be understood by everybody there. So yeah, they're different and maybe not equal depending on who you ask, because verbal testimony, you're showing up to a table, when we were in person, but hopefully still over video calls here. The agencies are facing the public. It's a really important time to, again, humanize the issue, increase accountability amongst the agency staff, and to really speak directly to the folks that have the potential to make these decisions and explain to them why you're so passionate about these issues. So yeah, your written testimony can be any length, but if you are going to deliver it at a hearing, make sure that you have a shorter version. I always, when I know that there's going to be a time limit, practice what I'm going to say and time it out to make sure that it fits. So yeah, it's important also to note that different states have different processes and standards for submitting comments. So just make sure that you're researching the process for the agency that you're going to be submitting a comment to. You can usually submit both a verbal and a written comment. So you do have to be careful with the verbal testimony, because sometimes at public hearings, they are not on the record. They're not doing live recording of what people are saying. So you can always ask if statements are on the record, and you can always back up your verbal testimony by submitting a written comment, just to be sure that what you're sharing with the agency gets in and is counted. And then, yeah, so this is about what's better. So verbal testimony is definitely powerful. And this is more about the logistical side of things. So like I said, written testimony can be any length, but you'll have to shorten it to give a verbal testimony. But at some hearings, you will need to make a request for a time slot to give a verbal comment. Some agencies will even limit the amount of folks that can sign up for a verbal comment, which is problematic in its own right. But you just have to make sure that you check what the rules are, read the draft rules and permits. Usually in the document that you're commenting on, there's a contact listed that you can reach out to with any questions about commenting or hearings. So because of the planning required to give a verbal public comment, written comments are often more convenient, especially if you're dealing with any of the accessibility issues that we talked about earlier. Awesome. So thank you all so much for listening to that presentation. I hope that it was informative and helpful. And now we'll move into talking a little bit about an opportunity to put these skills to use. So like I mentioned, Colorado is currently going through a rulemaking on what's called regional haze. And this picture that I have here is actually of the Cherokee Generating Station. It's a fracked gas plant that sits in North Denver. If you've ever driven on the highway, you've probably seen it on your way to downtown on I-70. So this is a gas plant that sits in a community, and it was recently converted from a coal plant, so there's less emissions now, but there's still emissions coming out from it that are, of course, harmful to our climate and harmful to the public health of the communities that live around it. So what is regional haze? So Regional Haze State Implementation Plan, or an SIP. This is something that the Federal Clean Air Act contains. So it's a provision within the Federal Clean Air Act. So it's about eliminating visible air pollution in certain national parks, wilderness areas, basically protected lands. So the first round of regional haze state implementation plans, or SIPs, covered the years 2008 through 2021. And we're coming up on a new round of plans due in July 2021 that will cover the period from 2021 through 2028. So right now, Colorado is considering pollution controls and early retirements required to reduce the visible haze, the visible air pollution in Colorado's protected areas. So this includes Rocky Mountain National Park and Dinosaur National Monument, among others. So here is a list of the early retirements proposed in August by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE. So if you've been following any of these issues at all, this is going to be a really exciting list too. At the bottom, you have the Cherokee 4 gas plant, which is the picture that I just showed you. I'll say right now, I've never seen a gas plant on a list like this. So we're really moving into the future, working on not just closing coal plants, but also moving off of gas and towards renewable energy as well. So that's really exciting to me. And then everything else here is various coal plants across the state. So I do also want to take a second to say that, we think CDPHE can do better than these proposals. So we've proposed 2028 or earlier retirements for most of these polluting coal and gas plants. But these dates are a really good starting point. So, if through this rulemaking we can lock in some of these retirement dates, it doesn't mean that, that's it and we're going to wipe our hands of it and that's the end of that fight. Like, we can always push to retire those plants even earlier. But this is a really great opportunity to get the ball rolling. And, at the very least, we have these year deadlines locked in for these plants. So it's a really exciting opportunity. But, it's still not enough. It's still not bold enough action to protect climate and public health. So that's why this is a really important opportunity for us to give public comments to try to push CDPHE in the right direction. So that's the good news. The good news is that cleaner air for our national parks will also mean cleaner air for Colorado communities. But I do just want to take a second to highlight that this is a little bit of an unjust conversation. So I made this handy dandy map on Google Maps, and the point that we have right over where it says Denver, that is where the Cherokee generating station is located. So it's Xcel Energy's fracked gas plant that we were just talking about in North Denver. And then the other two pins are Rocky Mountain National Park and Dinosaur National Monument, the two protected lands, which I mentioned are subjects of this rulemaking. It's the whole point behind regional haze is to limit visible air pollution in those 2 points, the two on the left in the map. So yeah, this is crazy because Cherokee, the gas plant, is 60 miles away from Rocky Mountain National Park, the closer point on the map. And it's about 250 miles away from the Dinosaur National Monument. Meanwhile, 67,000 Coloradans, according to the EPA's environmental justice screen, live within just 3 miles of that plant, and every day have to live with the pollution from those facilities. The picture that I took of Cherokee Generating Station that I showed a few slides back, my partner and I went out and took the pictures ourselves. And even just being around that area for about an hour to take photos, I noticed a difference in my breathing. My eyes were stinging. I had a sore throat. There are 67,000 people that live in proximity to that facility and are dealing with health issues every single day. So, I'm happy that we have this opportunity to make change, but we also need to, make our voices heard that this is not just about protecting parks. We need to protect our national, our public lands, of course, but we also need to protect, the communities that are most impacted, directly by the pollution that they breathe in every single day. So what can we do? This is a really important, I think, time to get involved in the public comment process. And I'm really excited that we're hosting this workshop now because there's an opportunity coming up right away. So on November 19th will be an opportunity for verbal public comments between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. The Air Quality Control Commission, or AQCC, will be hosting a virtual hearing to hear from the public on the proposed state implementation plan to meet our regional haze guidelines. So, it's our chance to, push for these early retirements and also to elevate the conversation about, not just our parks, but also our communities, and holding polluters accountable for helping Colorado meet our statewide climate pollution reduction goals, keeping our air clean and clear, but also protecting public health and making sure that the communities most impacted by this pollution are a part of solving the issues that they've been dealing with for so long and are able to benefit from this cleaner air themselves. So yes, there will be an opportunity to give a verbal public comment on November 19th between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. There's a form right here to register for the verbal public comment session. It's not live yet, but it will be activated at 8 a.m. on November 10th, 2020. So just next week. Is that next week? The days are all blending together. But so very soon it'll be an opportunity to register for public comments. And we are hoping to get at least 5 folks. We need at least 5 folks to sign up and to really speak up so that we can raise these issues. So is there anybody on the call that is willing to join, can commit to do that? We definitely need as many people as we can get. So if you are interested, you can drop your name in the chat. I'll send follow-up information to everybody that is on this call. You'll get the link to the forums so that you can sign up if you so choose. But I'd love to have folks opt in now if anybody is interested. Make that commitment, and I'll definitely help you draft your comment, and you'll have everything that you need to help raise your voice on this issue. Cool. So without further ado, we can move into Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen for now. And I'm going to go ahead and open up our chat and our question box here. And if anybody has any specific questions that they'd like to ask about the presentation or about regional haze or about public comments in general, I'll open it up for a few minutes for anyone that has any unanswered questions. So I'm seeing one question from Sherry. Hi, Sherry. So glad you're here. Yes, I believe that this that for the regional haze hearing, it will be virtual. It'll be online only. And then Lorena, not sure how to pronounce your name, but thank you for your question. It says that you're interested in participating. Will we share public comments in person? Yes, it'll be online. Most of these most of these hearings have been moved online at this point, if not all. Honestly, I think I obviously haven't looked into every single one, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find a government agency that's meeting in person right now. Cool. I see Sherry wants to give a comment. Thank you so much for your help. I will definitely follow up with everyone on this call with details on how to sign up. But like I said, it goes live on November 10th at 8 a.m. So honestly, the closer to when the form is activated you can sign up, the better. Sometimes spots get snatched up. I'm not sure if there's going to be a limit for how many people are able to comment at this hearing. So it's best to just grab a spot as quickly as possible. Cool. To hear more about the issue and might be available to give a comment. Okay, cool. I see you, Velma. Yeah, I have just kind of like a brief advocacy overview about regional haze and the opportunity to give comments, which I can also send around through email to all of our lovely participants today, so that you can read a little bit more about the issue and make sure that you're super informed and ready to give your comment. Awesome. Well, oh, wait, there's one more that just came in. Should public comments to the facts or science rather than including more of an emotional appeal? Thank you for that question. I, for one, am a strong believer in the power of narrative organizing, which means, sharing your story. I think it's important to do both. I think that like the best public comments will have a healthy combination of both. It'll, cite evidence and then also explain how that impacts you, especially for giving a verbal comment. I think it's really powerful to share some of your lived experience, because they're able to see you and hear your voice and really think about the way the rules that are being drafted and commented on will affect day-to-day people. So yeah, definitely don't stick to just facts or science. If you have an emotional appeal that you'd like to share, I think this is a great opportunity to do that. And written comments were being taken for the regional Haze rulemaking, but unfortunately the period for written comments is closed. Yeah, so missed the window on that one, but there will be another hearing process. I believe it'll be in 2021. I believe it's in July. Yeah, I don't have the date off the top of my head, but there may be another opportunity for written public comments on this issue. But for this particular rulemaking, that opportunity has passed, unfortunately. Yeah, I want to highlight this comment for community members. Too often, they feel if they're not experts, they can't testify, but the experience and impact of communities gives you, or gives the science meaning. Exactly. Environmental justice is super important, and that's a big reason why it was really important for me to try to organize folks to give comments on this issue, because while I'm happy we're talking about earlier retirements for coal plants and the one gas plant, we need to think about why. It's important to speak up for our protecting our environment, but it's also important to think about who we're speaking up for. And yeah, just because you're not a scientist doesn't mean you're not an expert. I am an expert on the neighborhood that I live in because I live in it every day. I certainly know a lot more about what it's like to be a part of my community than, government agency employees that have never even been here do. So yeah, absolutely share your experience. I'm really happy that y'all are talking about that. How old do you have to be to speak? As far as I know, there's not a minimum age, and I do know of folks bringing their kiddos to give testimony at similar hearings, and I think it's always super powerful, especially as far as the climate change issues go. We have to the next generation. So yeah, if you have a little one, I don't think there's a minimum age, and yeah, way to start them young, get them involved in the democratic process. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks to the couple of y'all that have opted in. Like I said, I'll certainly follow up with more information for you guys that are interested in giving comments. And yeah, thank you all so much for joining here. I'm going to throw up one more quick screen real quick. Do. Cool. So thank you all so much for being here tonight, especially with everything going on in the world. And then I wanted to give you all my contact information. My email is just ren.smith@sierraclub.org, super easy. My phone number is 818-808-5676. Seriously, email, call, text at any time for answers to any other questions that you think of later or that I didn't get to. To learn more, be kept in the loop about opportunities like this to comment or to volunteer, contact me for any of that. And then a big thanks to my Star Beyond Coal volunteers, a few of whom are on the call, for helping put this together. I'm really excited about this organizing tactics series that we have all been working to plan together. And if you enjoyed this, definitely stay tuned on our Colorado Sierra Club social media pages to hear about the next installments in the series. It's going to be some really awesome, relevant information that I think we could all use, a bit of empowerment in these crazy political times. So yeah, definitely stay tuned to learn more. And by the time you're done with the series, you'll be a superstar organizer. So I'm really excited to be able to help get this information out to people. Cool. Well, we are right on time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to just check the questions to make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got you all. So yeah, thanks one more time, everyone, for being here tonight. I know it's not an easy time to be thinking about other things, but it is an important time to be thinking about other things. And I'm glad that we have tools like this to, um, really take matters into our own hands and make a difference in our communities. It doesn't stop at voting. There's so much more that you could do to make your voices heard. So yeah, with that, I'll say goodbye. Thanks so much again, everyone, and do something to take care of yourself tonight. It's a very stressful time, so I hope everybody is doing well. Cool. Well, thanks again for being here. I will talk to you all soon.